Well, it just needs to be a clap that's in any way audible so that you hear it and you also see it so they can coordinate the three things. This is where I want to talk to you about an apostolate. Now, what on earth is an apostolate? It sounds like a really small apostle. So an apostle was somebody who was sent. That's what it means. Jesus himself was sent from the Father, and so too he sent the apostles, and he really sent the whole church. In Matthew 28, Jesus says to all of the disciples there, not just the 12, and therefore he says it to us, go and make disciples of all nations. So the word apostolate then means, what is the way that I am sent? And in its simplest terms, you could say, is there some sort of work or ministry that I do that helps build the church, helps build the kingdom? Now, there's many, many ways and forms that could take, but today I particularly want to focus on what I would say is really universal. Evangelization, sharing our faith, sharing the gospel with other people. Why would we do this? So of course, we have Matthew 28 and various other places where Jesus strongly suggests it. He commands it. But there's also, if you think of other passages in Scripture, and I would summarize this as roots and fruits. Jesus compares us to a tree. He says a tree that doesn't bear fruit, it's not a healthy tree, or it's not a fruit tree. But he was talking about fruit trees. So we're supposed to be fruit trees. We're supposed to not only have roots and receive the nutrition, the feeding, if you will, of our soul from God and from our faith, but we're also then supposed to pass that on. And if we stop, then we're kind of dead. Jesus spoke about this, I believe, quite directly in the parable of the talents. So it was these three guys, and they were servants, they were stewards of this king. And he gave them a number of talents each. Now, a talent is 15 years' wages. That's a pile of cash. Just one of them is a pile of cash. So he gives this to them and says, go and invest. Make some money. So the guy had 10 and he went off and he doubled it. The guy had 5 and so various different numbers. And when the boss comes back, they tell him, they show him, I've doubled your money, and he's amazing, and he gives him even more responsibility. But then the last guy comes down. He got 1 talent, which is still piles of cash. And he said, I know you're a terrifying person. I was really afraid, so I wrapped it up and I buried it in the ground. I kept it really, really safe. So here it is, your talent back, undamaged. And the boss responds by saying, you wicked and lazy servant. Now, what I would suggest there is that's kind of like somebody who has roots but no fruit. Somebody who has faith, maybe they're praying, they're doing all their stuff, but they've never passed it on. We're supposed to multiply. If I get to heaven and it's just me, I'm in trouble. So first, we do need to invest in ourselves. We do need to grow in our relationship with God. But then we need to invest in others. They are our capital, you could say. They are the fruit of our labors. Do you have much fruit for your labors yet? That's our goal. That's our goal in this episode. How to have more fruit for our labor. So Jesus commanded this. He did it himself. So just for the sake of imitation, we could do this. It's also, if you take the eternal perspective, what do I mean by that? So this life is how long? 80 years, 90? It says in the scriptures 70 years or 80 for those who are strong. So for some it's tragically shorter than that. Whatever it is, it's limited. But eternal life, the life after this life is it's eternal. It doesn't stop. It goes on and on and on. So if we can make an impact on someone, not just for this life, but for eternity, and impact their eternal destiny, there's nothing compared to that. It doesn't matter how much you've helped someone. He was in a real tough financial bind and I really helped him there. This person was sick and I stayed with them overnight in the hospital. That's amazing. But no matter what it is, even your whole life given in service cannot compare to impacting someone's eternal destiny. You could be the decider in them getting to heaven for all eternity, for their perfect happiness and joy. Can you imagine the thank you? It doesn't bear thinking about. It is so worth it. But also, it is great fun. I've gotten to do this loads in my life as a friar and just as a Catholic. It's amazing to see somebody at an event or even just one-on-one, almost before your eyes, watching them having an experience of God, watching them come alive in faith. It's beautiful and it's really enjoyable. It was what you were created to do. So let's take a look at how to do this. So by now, you might well be terrified. That's probably a healthy reaction. Images of televangelists, or worse still, street corner preachers. Now, is that not a terrifying thought? But I want to just reassure you, there's actually really, really simple ways to share our faith with other people. Inspire, invite, and invest. I made that up myself. Well, the first one I made up. Got the other two from somebody else. But they all start with I, and I'm really proud of that. To inspire. What do I mean by that? Well, to live our Catholic faith authentically means that in a very real way, Jesus is shining through us. Jesus is alive and active in our life. And it's contagious. Like, people do notice it in various different ways. So to live that, to live, as Jesus said, to be a city on a hill, and to not hide that light of faith and the light of God's love in our lives. To invite. Do you know how the church began? How it grew in the first couple of centuries? It wasn't primarily through big preaching events. Most of the church's growth over those early centuries actually happened not by great preachers, but by normal Catholics. Normal people like you or me. Okay, so maybe I'm not super normal, but that's just the way I dress. But regular Catholics, church-going folks, who would invite other people. I had a friend in university and we were studying the same courses and we'd gotten to know each other quite well. And I knew that they believed and they knew that I believed. But I used to go to these retreats and I had never invited them along to come along with me. I was afraid. I was afraid they might say no. Wouldn't that be the end of the world? No. Anyway, it was the end of my course and I said, well, I've got this one coming up. I'm helping organize it. Why not? I'll do it. I was saying to everybody else who was organizing the retreat, you need to invite people. It's like, oh, fine, I need to invite. So I invited her along. And she had a blast. She loved it. And everyone loved it. It was beautiful. Match made in heaven. Anyway, next week, we were back in university. And we were hanging out, myself and my friend. And we were talking about the event. And she said to me, she looked at me, and she said, how dare you? I'm like, oh no. She said, how dare you not have told me about this sooner? It's like, oh. I think you might be surprised how positively people will react to events that are really good, to the opportunity to grow in their faith or to encounter Jesus for the first time. I think you might be surprised. Our third and last point is to invest. So we've already maybe been inviting lots of people, throwing that net nice and wide, getting lots of people to come to these events. But if we want to go deeper, we can't do that with loads. Not even Jesus could do it with loads. We want to really, really focus and say, is there one or two people that after some prayer and some discernment, one or two people who are ready for a deeper investment? Okay, so let's say then you've got your one or two people. I mean, you could take more, but it would take a lot of time. So just one or two people that you're thinking, right, I'm going to invest in them. And now what does that investment look like? Well, I would say we go back to our other word of invitation. You're just going to invite them more deeply into the basics, the non-negotiables of our faith. And that's exactly what we've been talking about in this series. You just want to invite them more deeply into that interior life, that life of connection and prayer with God. Invite them more deeply into the sacraments, especially the Eucharist and confession. Invite them more deeply into learning more about their faith. into community and into what we're talking about right now, which is passing on their faith to others. The first part of investing, before we get to the 5 episodes and the content there, we just want to really focus on investing like you normally do with a friend. And this isn't, you don't want to be manipulative with this. Like, who can I bring into my religious club? Wow. So I'm going to be your friend. It's like, no, you actually be a friend. Jesus came really to befriend us. He really wants union with us. He's not joking. He's not manipulating. And so too, we shouldn't be trying to use, connection and friendship in a fake way. That would completely contradict the heart of the gospel. So don't go that way. Like, if you're going to do this, sincerely do this. Choose to love the other and have a real free gift of self. I choose to be a friend because that's what you actually want to do. That's what you're moved to do. That's what comes naturally. And that's what you really also comes supernaturally. And then with each step of these non-negotiables, these essential aspects of our faith, of being a disciple, again, you want to try and do it together as much as possible. So for example, with prayer, with the interior life, let's talk about it. Like, what was your prayer life over this week? Or if they're not praying at all, say, listen, I've been trying to grow in connecting in a real way with God. Would you be interested in doing something together about that? Almost like co-mentors in this program, rather than be, I shall teach thee. Yes, sit at my feet. Good student. As best as possible to really do this from a place of friendship, of equality. With the second aspect of the sacraments, especially the Eucharist and confession, why not invite them along to Mass? Maybe you've already been doing that. And to share with them then what's really helped you, which flows perfectly, right, from conversations about prayer. What's helped you to pray the Mass better? What's helped you understand it better? And to see if coming to Mass with you becomes a more regular thing. And even with confession, I've been very, very surprised, even by non-Catholic friends who are kind of fascinated by confession. And when I've said to them, it's like, you can't actually go in. Just tell the priest that you're not Catholic, but they still can get in there and just start to experience something of it, or even just to have a chat with the priest, to start to open their eyes to see something of what that is, what that experience is like. In then growing in our faith together, our knowledge of our faith, I think this one works very nicely. And just to say, with these points, you don't have to do them all at once. That might be very overwhelming. Just try one in the friendship. Just throw a little bit, like throwing a little bit of salt on the meal. Throw it in and see how it works. Then maybe throw in a bit of the next one. So at some point, growing in your faith together, it can be a great thing because you're going to be doing this anyway, right? So just talk about some of that stuff. I was reading this book at the moment. Boom. Going to this event, this talk. Go to things together that are formative. Maybe a more formal setting every now and again, like a Bible study or a Catholic book club. Catholic community, of course, you're probably doing this one already. Very, very simple. Invite them along. And ultimately, our goal is in all of this to bring them to where you are. And this final step of sending somebody so that they have all that they need to be able to pass on what they've received from you, that might take a while. For some people, it might even take years. So we're not talking about, 2 weeks of investment here. We are talking about a longer investment. But just to be patient with the process, but to know that there's nothing more amazing than you've invested in this, and then you get to see them do it with somebody else. And then maybe you get to see that next generation do it. The faith is contagious. But if we don't step up and realize, I have a key role, I am essential in this chain of faith, coming all the way from Jesus to you today and to somebody else tomorrow. You're that next step. So that's my simple little system for sharing your faith, for having a personal apostolate, to inspire others, to invite them, and to invest in them. And then to bring them through those 5 simple steps. Pass on what you yourself have received. If you give this a go, I really think it's a recipe for revolution. This is how the church grew. It exploded all across the Roman Empire in those first couple of centuries, just by simple folks, normal folks, doing exactly this. It's not rocket science. It's a lot simpler and it's way more powerful.